Hello, my friend. I'm so happy to have you for this episode of the Enneagram and Marriage Pod. Today, we're talking about lighting safe fireworks in your marriage. This is our sexual intimacy series opener. If you joined us for June, you knew this was coming, and we knew that intimacy outside of the bedroom had to be talked about first. So make sure you head back over to June's episodes. If you missed any of those, they are all there for you to lay the foundation today. So make sure you know that. And also, I hope you have a fun fourth if you are traveling like we are. I hope you're safe, healthy. I hope that you find the rest that you need if you are allowing for just even a few hours of that. Sometimes those weeks are busier and we just say, I'm plugging along at work, Christa, this week, but I am going to take a few hours to enjoy a special movie opener or a special way to celebrate with fireworks if you're in the US. Whatever you're doing, be safe, be healthy, be as emotionally healthy as you can too. And hopefully today you'll even have some sexual intimacy that's healthier as well. So let's hope for that as well for you because that's a part of marriage as well. And not all the fireworks are in the sky. We also want them for you guys. So we're talking about sexual intimacy, but a lot of the time people are not exactly taught what helps to make that in your marriage. Everybody wants those fireworks, but you're like, how do we do that safely? Just like in literally the Lord of the Rings, you see, yes, I had to bring Lord of the Rings in. You see them having this lighting of fireworks, and it's a little bit too dangerous. And so, just like in this month of talking about the sexual aspects of marriage, even with real fireworks, you have to practice that. So, I want you to know we're going to talk honestly, warmly, very practically, and in a faith-friendly way about desire in the body and safety and building that physical life together. Also, that's part of it, and it's genuinely alive. So remember, most of us learned that fireworks just come spontaneously, and sometimes we learned through literal fires of like scary talks we had in our sex ed classes that said, hey, you could get a pregnancy here. And maybe some of you even did have a young pregnancy and you get that. But I want you to understand the real passion just strikes like lightning sometimes, and often there is a working towards that. And don't think anymore, at least, that if that's part of your wiring as a couple, that you do have to work at it, that something's wrong with you or wrong with your marriage. It's not. I was just walking with somebody this morning and they were talking about something. I don't want to name it in case they're listening or something, but it was just, they were a friend of mine and just sharing something. And I'm like, oh, yeah, this is something that Wes does with his patients, like to help. Like, you have to work on it. It's part of life. And I feel like that myth has wrecked a lot of marriages because it makes couples feel broken when they just need some tools. And I want you to know that fireworks are built, right? That is, there's engineering, there's timing, there's sequence, there's preparation, expertise, and even around every shell of your fireworks preparation. Similarly here, this analogy goes a long way, guys. Um, but nobody watches that 4th of July show and says, wow, what a lucky accident. They know a lot of intention went into that beauty. And there was a wow factor. And that's what we want for you also, because lasting passion will still have some of that. It will not be an idol to you, but you'll still have that. And it's the intentional people who are the quotes lucky ones. So before we go a step further, I want to release any shame that says working on this means something's wrong. In fact, working on it is exactly what thriving couples do because things change and shift across seasons. And the intention is not the opposite of romance. The intention is the romance because caring deeply is sexy. So, I want to talk about the sexual instinct as we lay this foundation because we know that for those who are really active listeners here, that really we got some more reminders of what the sexual instinct was early this year. I mean, think, oh goodness, it's talked about inerrantly, sometimes even in Enneagram spaces. And often I think about systems and sometimes just naming them. I'm going to nerd out on you for a moment. Apologies. But what is the point of trying to get the system more right when it's just words? It's not like it's an actual, science experiment with, you need this much NaCl, etc. But my point is, it's still important to talk about systems so you can monitor how you're doing in different areas of your life. So it just doesn't all flow and then you don't have any order. You still need order in relationships. So naming what the sexual instinct is helps us to isolate it to make sure it's healthy versus if we throw it into all the social things a couple does, which is where we were used to doing that. Like, oh, well, connecting socially and boundaries and celebrating and nonverbal communication and having one-to-one time that is all about talking about our problems. This can't all be the sexual instinct, and it isn't. That's very social wiring conversation. Some of that is even self-pres conversations. How's our finances doing? How's our security doing? Wes and I had to go over that recently because I had been charging my electric car and somebody was trying to bother me and harass me when I was in the car, just obviously like on drugs or something. And I was at a safe place, but it was morning, and I don't normally do that. I usually charge in my own garage, but it was just we needed to talk out protocol. Wes had to buy something different so that I could have a breakaway experience. Maybe some of you have already bought one of those. All of my thinking types listening are like, yes, girl, like get that breakaway, and like self-pres types. But I also had to like rise up and be strong. And I was, because it was like 3 times coming back to my car. Anyway, whole drama series. But what I'm really getting at is we need those conversations, but they're not sexual instinct. Like that is not a sexual instinct. That is like self-pres. You heard me say some of it is social. Like, hey, when we were at that party and like you were not talking about me and you never said a word about me and you only kept talking about them, like that's not sexual, right? Like that's not sexual. That's social. That's how we engage socially. And unfortunately, we just grouped it all into the sexual instinct. And instead, what sexual instinct is what we're talking about this month. And it's more about novelty, an intense spark, creating aliveness. And it is the part of us that's drawn to the charge, and to chemistry, and to that electric edge of that new experience. And it's like, ooh, there's an unknown edge here. Let's pursue that a little bit. Nothing crazy that's going to hurt us. And please tell your spouse if it does. That is absolutely most important to be honored. But to know that we have to keep our fireworks going intentionally, not just always naturally, that is part of it. And it tells us something crucial, that if our sexual chemistry is built somewhat here after the foundation of safety was laid last month on also novelty and aliveness, it tells us something crucial, that you need freshness, play, and intensity, not just the closeness and comfort that we built the attachment needs on. And again, anyone did not take in last night or last month. And I said that sentence so poorly. Let me just repeat it. Anyone who did not take in the work of last month on this podcast, you're going to just think, oh my gosh, this woman is just talking about the sexual instinct being everything. No, you have to go back to June. I'm never so bossy as when I'm saying this. But we are here now. We are here together, and we know that. And we have laid that beautiful, safe foundation for you to hear these words once again, that the spark in a marriage feeds on freshness, play, intensity, novelty, charge, chemistry. So we have to look at that for you to say, how are we going to do that? And we're going to look at it all month here. This is not our only time. And if you're like, I need even more on Apple Podcasts, I have a deeper dive podcast that's for my members or people who buy that on Apple. So I always have to reserve that for deeper divers because they actually buy membership time with me every month to have closer conversations. It's like I'm doing a session, but it's group. And so just make sure you head over to Apple if you're like, I even want more. And you'll see on Apple what those titles are. But they're very nominally priced. So basically, we already talked a little bit about spontaneous versus responsive desire. And I do want to remind you of it because it is freeing couples. And I mentioned it briefly last time, that everyone has a bit of responsive desire because no one always wants to have to be the pursuer, right? And that does happen, by the way. And it is okay if you guys are like, yeah, I am the pursuer, and that's okay with us. Like, I'm not trying to fix what isn't broken, but I'm just naming everyone wants to feel wanted. That's a human experience, right? That's attachment. John Bowlby's work, Ainsworth's work, since the beginning of these discoveries, that children who did not get love did not live even if they got milk. So it's important for you to understand that in marriage, you also do want to have some responsive and initiative desire both. But I think that we just have to name that sometimes when desire shows up and leads toward your partner and the other partner isn't feeling it, it can be very hurtful. And it's like, man, I don't feel it. And either I feel rejected because you don't feel it, or I feel annoyed because you're pushing me too hard. And I think we need to recognize that the ones who just have more of a responsive sexual desire, let's be very clear, we're talking about sexual desire, they're not necessarily not interested. They're just not creating or having the craving right at that moment. They're having a fairly neutral space. You may have to prime the pump, if you will, in whatever capacity that looks like. And so, through touch, through warmth and the right context, then arousal begins. And that's when desire shows up. And it matters so deeply because people get wounded when they do not have positive sentiment to override here. And we talked a lot about positive sentiment override last month. So, reminder to you, it means pausing, reflecting, maybe even owning something hurts. That's okay to do. But then to say to yourself, oh, I can be an adult here. They're still responsive. They want me, but they're just not ready yet. And maybe even as, again, I hear from a lot of people, they say, hey, you know what? My desire is not what it was in its my 20s or 30s or teens. And so maybe I do need that looking at this with my doctor in terms of testosterone or estrogen. And they have creams and pellets and shots and all these different ways you can look at that. But that's going to be up to you and your doctor. But here we need to start with nobody is a bad person because they don't have a sexual craving. First, it could be the stuff we talked about last month, which is why I keep pointing you back there. But even within just this, let's say you got that, you're good there, but you still wonder, why don't you want me sexually? Well, understand that sometimes there is attractiveness, but that's just not how desire works for them. And for some of them, it's like it's a spark that strikes first, and others, it's still a spark. It's still going to be, but it needs kindling. It needs warmth. It can be so important and it can dissolve years of shame and rejection in a single conversation if you just talk about that and you just say that. So that is one of the pieces we're talking about this month. Understanding your own wiring, your spouse's, the instincts that fuel you, the desire style that fuels you and your spouse, and it's refusing the shame that has kept you guys silent and stuck. And so, with your spouse this week, it's a gentle reminder to ask, do you think your desire tends to show up first, or does it tend to grow once we're already connected and close? And just come at that question with some curiosity because I know we've had great conversations about that and they've shifted and changed over the years. And I think those are important conversations to have. And also, the time you have them is very important. Some people are like, really like, I do not want any possible way for my kids to hear this, even if we're in our room by ourselves, they may feel that. So it's important that you don't just kind of blurt it out if you've got that spouse who says that. I also want you to understand that we have some great ways to reignite you. We're talking about those on the other pod a little bit at Apple, like I said, more in depth. But I also want to just name that sometimes that early passion does fade too, in addition to having some of us be a bit more responsive and a bit more initiating. Sometimes the brain imaging from example, Helen Fisher's work shows us that the same circuitry involved in motivation, craving, and reward seeking is that uncertainty, the mystery of the person you're still discovering. But when over time your spouse is this familiar place, the novelty driven dopamine sort of shifts. So you have to also, at the same time as recognizing responsive and initiative desire, be asking yourself, what's different about our neurochemistry? And to read, I mean, I have been studying a lot about infidelity, also working with a lot of couples with that lately. And the book Infidelity by Rosenberg really goes into the same sort of science that, yeah, there's just a lot of dopamine around that. So for you to be able to say, oh, yeah, I've got this calmer, deeper oxytocin and vasopressin bonding going, but I don't have as much of that. I need to build some really important novelty and aliveness again, that is really a good thought to go through and to ask, how can I reignite that? And that's where we have already kind of been peeking across to this month. So I'm just kind of filling you in this episode to say, we're peeking through to go, yes, this is true. We talked about it last month. Here's where it fits. And it fits in doing novel and physically arousing activities together. Things a little new, a little challenging, a little thrilling. And when couples did this versus just couples who did pleasant but familiar activities, the couples who did the novel and exciting ones reported, as you can guess, significantly higher relationship satisfaction afterwards, and resulted in higher passionate love and desire because the dopamine reward system came. And it's from early love, but it relinked to your partner again, not just other people who are fun and new to you, right? Because of course that's going to happen. So like I said, we're bringing some deep love and commitment to each other. We're bringing care, but we're also bringing some science to say, yeah, you're going to be feeding on novelty, intensive, and alive experiences. This is the accelerator that gets you in the right direction once you've done the foundational work. So be a little edgy, introduce something a little novel, nothing immoral. That's going to be where you guys say, let's buy some special new outfits, like maybe something you are tired of. Like, oh my gosh, like we're tired of the same bed sheets. We're tired of the same things we've been wearing. We're tired. And I'm talking about even just out and about outfits. Like literally, like you're walking out there in the same shirt and t-shirt. Like I'm going to laugh with you on this. Wes has had a t-shirt, I think I've shared this before, that's over 10 years old, and it's maybe even 15 at this point. And we just laugh about it as a family. But imagine if he wore that on every date. I'd be like, I'm kind of feeling the ick from that. And same thing if I was always in the exact same outfit every date. So if you're thinking, oh, we even are going to take that one step further, Christa, we love to look at lingerie, or, we love certain types of lotions we massage each other with, or we're going to go somewhere. We're going to have a hotel night stay, just the two of us, and we're going to get a jacuzzi, or we're going to go get a massage. I mean, allow yourselves to find some play. Allow yourself to just bask in the romanticism of things. Like maybe you literally go eat oysters together and you say, this is a sexy food, or I bought this perfume that's an aphrodisiac. Let's try it out tonight. Like it could be the smallest thing, but what I'm helping you to see is the couples that were studied over 2 decades who still reported being intensely in love, they found this activated dopamine reward region of the brain. And long-term passion is not a myth. It's neurologically ready and available, but it's built intended like a fire. It's not stumbled on. So we're bringing this all together. And I want you to know it was all kind of giving us the acceleration in June. So come back to that if you're like, my spouse doesn't like me. I'm not very good with them. I don't know how to love them. Like that's going to be the basis for what we just did today. And I also want you to know that I still have my Awakening Intimacy course walking you through all of this on a deep dive level. If you just need some nuanced care, if you're like, Christa, we need to work with you, that's when I'm available for new clients, July 13th and afterwards. So I hope that you will allow yourselves the grace to know you're not alone if you're working on this, to have that one conversation with your spouse, right? Like I said, which one are you? Are you more initiative or responsive desire these days? What fuels that? What makes you feel good in this way as we move toward each other? And just think of one thing you're going to do from this episode today. I hope you have more fireworks as a result. We'll be talking about making sure that happens all month long on the pod. Have a great day, you guys. I'll talk to you soon. Thank you again for listening with us. It was so wonderful to have you. I love knowing we're doing this journey together, not perfectly, but with love, grace, and hopefully some fun too. If you loved today's episode, make sure you leave us a 5-star review at Apple Podcast or Spotify so others can find it too. Visit our show notes so you can get all the links from today's show, as well as enneagramandmarriage.com, the Instagram, the Facebook, and all over the place. Make sure you spread the word. Love living intentionally with you. Bye-bye.